over the last, I would say, month and a half or maximum even 2 months. This legislation was going on, but most of us found out literally like a month ago, and there was no real committee hearing. It was in a sort of a hush hush manner.
Disingenuity of this whole thing that surrounds this ordinance actually is that somehow these people know our community better than our community itself.
If you look at the draft, it especially blamed Hinduism, saying that the caste is sort of connected to Hinduism. After some time, they removed those words and they just kept like caste in South Asia.
In America, one in every 8 child goes hungry every day, right? In America, every year 20,000 new cases of alcoholism comes out of the indigenous people.
Equality Lab, which is basically an open hate group that calls for dismantling of Hinduism and considers Holi as a festival that should not be celebrated because men throw semen at women.
Hello, a very good evening. Very good evening. Welcome back to Swarajya Conversations. I know that it's been a few weeks, but it's finally good to be here with all of you. The reason for my absence and the absence of videos on the channel is because we've been working on the Swarajya app. I know that it's already out there in the market, but it consists of hundreds of audiobooks right now, and then you can download the app on the Play Store right now and check it out. But more about that towards the end. Let me introduce my guest to you today, Mr. Nikunj Trivedi and Aldrin from the Coalition of Hindus of North America, KONA. Nikunj, Aldrin, thank you. Welcome back to Swarajya. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sharon. Pleasure to
Thank
be
you
here.
for having us.
So, Nikunji, the last time we were speaking about, a few anti-Hindu moves made by American universities. At this, the discourse was mostly academic, and the academic discourse has always been there. It's always been a narrative war. But what has happened in Seattle is a little unsettling because it's moved to a legislative level. Now, this is when things actually get really scary. Do explain the context of what this anti-discrimination, anti-caste discrimination law is, because obviously at the very outset it sounds very noble and well intended.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And once again, thank you for having us. So I want to take a step back. As you had mentioned, in the United States and other places, the discourse around caste has been academic. There's the pros and cons, complex, nuance, etc. We have always seen some kind of a narrative that says like caste is inherent to Hinduism. You can never get rid of Hinduism. I mean, you can never get rid of caste if you don't get rid of Hinduism or Hindu texts, things like that. So that has been around. Unfortunately, what happens is academic discourse does shape policymaking. And we have been warning about this for many years, that at some point, academic discourses will shift into policymaking. And that is what we have seen over the last couple of years. If you remember the Cisco case from 2020, where a manager was accused of caste discrimination. That Cisco case, by the way, has not settled. It's been almost 3 years. And there's a lot of evidence there that has come out over the past several, basically months, but especially a couple of years, where all three positions, the top positions, were actually given to the Dalit, for example. And there is evidence of systemic government abuse, where the state of California was trying to dictate what Hinduism is and what Hinduism is not. So there's a lot of information there, and that's a different conversation. But the reason I'm bringing that up is that was the first sort of scenario. Then came policies at universities. So universities passed caste discrimination policies. The latest one was the Cal State University system, where it's about 25 to 30 colleges that are in there, and there's a lawsuit against the Cal State University system. So now fast forward to Seattle. Essentially, you can see academic discourse now has become law in the city of Seattle. Now, if you look at how this whole thing came about, it was in a very fast, moving stuff. Over the last, I would say, month and a half or maximum even 2 months, this legislation was going on, but most of us found out literally like a month ago. And there was no real committee hearing. It was in a sort of a hush-hush manner, secret manner, where there was the councilwoman Kshama Sawant had already met with the opposing side, the side that is supporting the ordinance, sit down with them and draft this policy. If you look at the draft, it especially blamed Hinduism, saying that the caste is sort of connected to Hinduism. After some time, they removed those words and they just kept like caste in South Asia. But what's really interesting to say is to see
Yeah.
in there is the data that they have used, which is from a group like Equality Lab, which is basically an open hate group that calls for dismantling of Hinduism and considers Holi as a festival that should not be celebrated because men throw semen at women during Holi. So this is the kind of nonsense that such groups actually spew against the community, and it is their survey that is being used to legitimize the fact that there is widespread caste discrimination in the United States. Versus, if you look at the reputable Carnegie Endowment and others, have very specifically said that caste discrimination is not a significant factor in the American diaspora. Number one. Number two is that you should not be relying on the survey by Equality Labs because there are certain data related issues with that. So that's where we are. This legislation, which is now law, has serious consequences for the Hindu community. We'll talk about that more in a little while. But I'll stop here. I'll let Aldrinji talk.
Right. Arjunji, since a lot of data is being quoted and that is essentially being used to justify this law, uh, I think one basic element in this entire law is falling behind the fact that there is upper caste people who discriminate against the lower caste people, who essentially Dalit people and all of that, and they've quoted isolated incidents from here and there. So, is this justified as a premise to introduce this law? Where are its fault lines?
Yeah. As a member of Kona and everybody in Kona, we condemn strongly any kind of any kind of discrimination, any kind of oppression of any people around the world. We are absolutely with anybody that is suffering from any kind of discrimination. Having said that, the disingenuity of this whole thing that surrounds this ordinance actually is that somehow these people know our community better than our community itself. That's the problem. The problem is that the data that is coming from is people that have no connection to community. It's not like they have come into community and talked to the people, or they have come to the temples and talked to the people. Nothing. It's just the data that they have made up. I don't know where that is coming from. When you take the Cisco case, the this thing that I repeat every time that I talk, because it's so important to know how ignorant they are of our community. The thing that it states about Dalits in the Cisco case is they're dark skinned, oppressed, uneducated. So in my family, you can find all colors, all skin color, all education level. And I would like to sometimes present my family to these people. So I want them to retract whatever they said. But that's unfortunately is not going to happen because they're not worried about the law. And what is so insidious about this is I can think of 10 different things that can really, really benefit from all the effort that's going into this law. Like in America, one in every 8 child goes hungry every day, right? In America, every year, 20,000 new cases of alcoholism comes out of the indigenous people. Now, how many Dalits do you think exist in America if they did the census? That's Indians themselves are 1% of the population. How many of them are you think is Dalits? Now, what is this ordinance going to do to Hindu community? Nothing whatsoever. It's just going to create a problem with people who are opportunistic, who will come and take advantage of this. That's all. Nothing else. Nothing else. And how are they going to say who is a Dalit? So anybody randomly can come and say, I'm a Dalit, this guy discriminated against me and I want $2 million. Now, how are you going to say, oh, you're not? Now I'm going to say, I'm going to sue you by saying, oh, how dare you say that? I am a Dalit. Now you want me to prove? Who is going to give them certificate who is a Dalit? Now, how many jatis are there in 5,000 jatis? How do they know who is a Dalit? And the second thing is, like I've lived in this country for 35 years, right? In America. I've lived with Hindus all through these years. No Hindu ever has ever questioned me what my jati is, what my caste is, ever. I have pujas in my house. Everybody, I invite people Whoever doesn't have Diwali puja in their house, they come to my house to do the puja. Nobody ever say, "Oh, I cannot do puja with you." Right? I go to the temple. I have no problem. Nobody ever asked me, "Wait, like you can only go that far," or "Oh, you cannot do this." You cannot. I go. I touch the vigrahas. Nobody has any problem with that. Now I want to know, what is this that you're trying to protect me from my community? That's the question that I have. Show me one case that you can show in front of me and say, this is what you guys are doing, this is disgusting. And I will sort of say two more things and I'll stop. One other thing that I was very upset at is that every time that we go to these hearings, the nonsense that these people spew out of their ignorant mouth is unbelievable. Because last time when this guy was sitting there in Seattle and saying that my family does not accept my Dalit wife and they are militant vegetarians and they don't want my wife to be part of our family. Like I mean, I'm so sorry for your wife, but what a horrible family that you have, that you cannot come to a compromise of how you're going to make this work, because you're going to be part of each other's life. You're going to have children, they're going to have grandchildren. That's besides the point. Nobody is telling you that, but passing the ordinance is not going to change that. Your family is going to hate her because that's who they are. It's nothing to do with the community. Nobody in the community is going and say, "Oh, why did your son marry? You should not do this. You should not this." It's your choice, and it's your choice to now educate your family and say, "No, don't do this. This is not at all done, right?" But what is that got to do with you living in America and going to work and doing your own thing? It has nothing to do with it. So this shows that they have no genuine reason why they want to do this, except that they want to get to the next level of their career. That's all. I don't see any other thing.
Right.
And I couldn't see, every time I go to these hearings, I don't see one Dalit come and sit and say, this happened to me in America and I'm so upset. And by the way, Nikunji just referred to Cisco case. Cisco
Yeah.
case has not been tried and judged. These people are going around and saying Cisco case, Cisco. There is nothing. Nothing has been. No verdict has come
Proven.
out. But
Okay.
these people are using that as like a whip to go around telling people, because of the Cisco case we are doing. So this is where we are at
Right.
now.
No, interesting because it's also become a personality contest. First of all, Nikunji, it would be really great if you can give us a little background of this person, Kshama Sawant, because she's all over the internet. All of a sudden, she's being hailed as a hero. By everybody, even in India as well. So everybody's curious to find out more about her. First of all, and who is she? But if I can read between the lines, I can see some ambition over here, like Aldrin ji said.
Yeah, well, first time I heard about Kshama Sawant was during the CAA. So Seattle became one of the first cities to pass a resolution condemning India for the Citizenship Amendment Act. Of course, they ignored the fact that there's a humanitarian approach to it, and even in the United States, we have laws that are protecting such refugees and things like that. But besides the point, so that's the first time I learned about her and the way they organize. So it's the same crew that organized with Kshama Sawant. So she's member of the Socialist Party. She's a card-carrying socialist, basically. And if you listen to her testimonial or her speech during the hearing, she basically said essentially that capitalism must be destroyed and socialism should be brought in. So you understand where she's coming from, and she wants to go after every major corporation, Apple, Google, Facebook, and all the tech firms, and sue the hell out of them. That's really what this ordinance is going to be. She has landed into trouble in the past in terms of corruption. She has been charged or sort of pleaded guilty on some corruption charges as well. There was a recall vote about her, which she barely kind of escaped, and she obviously was able to kind of put that down. But she's not going to be running again, right? So what happens here is now here's an ordinance that is passed, and the people who are on the city council are going to be left holding the bag, so as to speak. So they will be dealing with all the litigation. They may be dealing with all the potential backlash that is coming, and any kind of employer issues, city ordinance issues, things like that. So she's giving that baggage to the people that are going to be left behind. But again, she's very, very fixated on her on her anti-Hindu bias and prejudice, because she has continued to use the wording as well as the data that shows the organizations that are behind this are vehemently anti-Hindu. And we have so much information. If you go to the Seattle's official website, where the city council host keeps the registrar information, all the legislation documents, you could see some of the supporting documents clearly say Hinduism is equal to caste and caste equals Hinduism. They are inextricably linked. In fact, her the ordinance, and I'll just read one little sentence. In fact, it actually says that caste is to be okay. Here it is. Caste is a system of rigid social stratification characterized by hereditary status, endogamy, and social barriers sanctioned by custom, law, or religion. Now, there is no law in the world, certainly not in India, that sanctions caste system. Okay, nor there is a law in
Yeah.
any, in a country like America and things like that. Similarly, no religion sanctions caste system. Okay, but she's basically putting it there to showcase the fact that this is such an egregious problem that it must be addressed.
First of all, how are these definitions even there? I mean, even a law school intern won't be able to do such a horrible job of it, you know? These are so loosely defined, you don't even
No, no,
know
no, no.
how do you define a religion? How do you
Yeah,
define law?
no. Let me tell you what they use for the definition of caste system. They use the Webster's dictionary. So all of a sudden, caste is defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary as a system of rigid social stratification characterized by hereditary status, endogamy, and social barriers sanctioned by custom, law, or religion. As I repeated before, that is these. They actually say that in the memo that they are going to be
Right.
using the Webster dictionary definition of caste. Now imagine this: an entire law is being created by using the Webster's dictionary definition of caste, which, by the way, is wrong.
I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I'm sorry, but I really can't help it.
No, it's serious, but it's also funny in the
Yeah,
same way.
yeah.
No, it's
How's the
very.
look? Yeah, yeah, Aldrin.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, it is comical. You would assume, you would imagine that you're sitting in Saturday Night Skit or something, and you're playing a part in it. It's ridiculous, and that's what bothers me the most. Like that's my point. My point is you're trying to recolonize us again by telling us what we should call ourselves, what should we should identify and describe ourselves as. And what it does, see, it's already done in institutions, into your school textbooks in America. I mean, most of the things that you learn about in India is in America is about caste system. You know how many foreigners go to India and come back and they tell me, oh, there's a caste system in India. And I say, I'm sitting right in front of you. If I bring 10 other Indians, you would never be able to tell which one of us are Dalits. Now you're coming and telling me, and this mindset has already, like, is there in America. And this is nothing to do with definitions or facts or anything. It's about you feeling good about yourself, because it's a feel good thing, right? Like, oh, I did this. And like what Nikunji said, Sawant says that she wants socialism in Washington State, and she wants these capitalism to be destroyed. So she has an agenda, which is good that at least she's honest about it. She has an agenda. So we have to see where this comes from, so that it doesn't matter. So when you want to destroy something, you just want weapon. Now she has weaponized the caste, and this is creating problem for us as a society, a community, and she doesn't care about it because it's nothing to do with her being a South Asian. She's using that as
Yeah,
a weapon, and her knowing something about caste, because these people do this all the time. When they don't want to, they don't believe in caste system. That's nonsense, it shouldn't be there. But suddenly when they want to talk about it, they just put on that I am a Savarna, so I come and talk to you. No, why don't you bring the people that you have abused and discriminated against? I want to hear from them. Bring them, because it should be a two-way street, this dialogue,
yeah.
not just preaching us again all over again.
And also in one of the quotes, it says it explicitly links caste discrimination with people of South Asian descent and Hinduism in the recitals. The concept of caste system is primarily associated with the South Asian region, where its existence is linked to the religiously sanctioned social structure of Hinduism. First of all, I mean, if anybody knows quote unquote South Asia as a region, you would know that probably the caste system is not just limited to Hinduism, if there is one like the way you describe at all. That even in Sikhs you find a certain system of classification. There's even Indian Muslims and Christians are not spared of it. That's the beauty of India, is that we absorb everything that's inherently Indian and then apply it to everything else that's Western. Uh, but is there no opposition to this sort of buffoonery on the ground? Like, apart from, I know that every time it's just you and HAF and all these folks opposing, but apart from that, what about the other Indian community, other people in the Indian community that are living there?
113 organizations,
Hmm.
113 organizations oppose this thing. Okay, they contain Hindu and Jain organizations. They contain even non-Hindu organizations. There's an Iranian Student Association. There's a New England Indian Christian Association. There is, there's all these different groups. There's also businesses who are concerned about this. So there's 113 different organizations oppose this thing. So it's not just two organizations. The fact that we are driving it, yes, of course, Kona has been on the forefront. We were on the ground. Our team was there to protest. We had testimonials. We testified at the hearing. We had a lot of that organizing done locally at the grassroots level, but even at the national level, we have seen a growing sort of like resistance to this. The challenge you face is that the Hindu community. I talk about this all the time. We are the 150-pound boxer that's going up against the 350-pound heavyweight boxer, and the rule has been made by the heavyweight boxer, right? So we have to learn how to box properly, and it's going to take some time to organize. We don't build allies. If you look at the other side, right, they bring in all these sort of non-South Asian groups that have, they have no idea. So on the ground, to give you an example, there was a lady from another community, a black community, a black lady, and she came over for protest. So one of our volunteers just went up to her and asked, "Why are you here?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm here to support this caste-based discrimination ordinance." And so they asked her, "Do you know anything about caste system?" She's like, "Well, I am not sure." She did not have an answer. But so that's not just one example. There are many such examples. So what you can see is some of these people have been just brought in from a political agenda perspective, and because it's a quid pro quo. I'll do something if for you tomorrow if you do something for me today. It doesn't matter if you know
Right.
anything about caste or not caste. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna come and support you. You're gonna come and
This
support
is
me.
like
That's how
that
these people have
teachers
built the
protest
alliances.
from House of Cards. They just get all the union people to stand in front of the office, and then they actually don't know what they're doing there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not even kidding you. That's one of the, some of our volunteers went up to some of these activists and asked them, "Do you know about caste? Do you know what this whole thing is about?" And there was really no answer from these people. So you can
Right.
see that on the ground. It's very important to be on the ground for that reason.
But we published an article in Swarajya which titles, "Here's Why the Lone Dissenting Seattle City Council Member Termed Anti-Caste Legislation Reckless and Unnecessary."
Yep.
At least there's one person who actually, you know, uh, thinks that this is not necessary. So tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so Councilwoman Sarah Nelson's letter is very powerful. She did her own independent investigation. No one supported her, gave her any documents, but she did her independent investigation and said, "Look, this is reckless because there is really no data available. The issue is very divided, and what we have not done, we as in the Seattle Council has not done, is to take into consideration the heavy opposition against this ordinance. There was a lot of opposition. So to give you an example, there was about in total of 20,000 emails that were sent to city council from our side. Okay, 113 organizations signed a letter opposing this thing. Right, there were people on the ground protesting. So none of that was really taken into consideration by the city council in a serious way. So the councilwoman was right, because you're not really looking at this in a proper way. The due diligence hasn't been done. The data is missing, and she's concerned that this will increase anti-Hindu sentiment and discrimination, basically Hinduphobia, because of the way the ordinance is structured and the way the language is written. So she's right in her own terms.
And to add to that,
Yeah.
Like I said, in 35 years of my life, I never had to say I'm a Dalit, right? When I joined Kona, I didn't say anything. Oh, they're like, welcome. Like we were doing things, and then there were other things that we were working on. Suddenly, this came out, and then I remember we were sitting going, "This is bad because we don't have somebody that we can speak for." And I'm like, see. That's the first day I ever opened my own mouth and say I'm a Dalit. That's the first day, and I had to actually call my friends and tell them, hey, by the way, I'm going to be talking about this. I want you to know. I'm like, they're like, why do you even call us? Like, what? No, I just want you to know. Like, no, what is that going to change? Like, there's nothing. So what this has made, whatever their intentions are, what this has made, now I have to myself say I'm a Dalit. Not that I ever run around and saying what that means, what this means, who am I, let me tell you what about me. I never had to do that with anybody. But now
Yeah.
suddenly I'm in a position where I have to go and stand with these people who really don't give a damn about me, right? Like, let's be honest, none of this is going to help me or people like me. It's never going to help people like me. I will guarantee you that. And if you want to really help, the caste does not come, the word itself does not come from India. The people who do these kind of things, that they separate people from their own societies, exist even today in America. The indigenous people are put into a place called reservation, and they're not part of the society. Those are the Dalits. Those are your Dalits. The Sami people of Sweden, those are your Dalits. The Australian Aborigines, those are your Dalits. You push them out of your society, give them a little place, throw them some money so they can get alcoholics, and then you call them, oh, that's indigenous people. No, like my people has never been outside the contribution of the society in our wherever we existed. So you don't get to decide who I am, how do I describe myself, what has been my history. You don't know anything about me. Nothing. We went to one of this university and I asked them, do you know who Ved Vyas was? And I get you. I will have to educate you because you wouldn't know. And once tell you that, then you will be surprised because you didn't know any of this. You know what Krishna means? We worship him, and Krishna means dark. He's dark. So all of these things, it's nothing to do with helping anybody. And that's the thing that I try to tell people. Like, see, like the Kona is doing a really good job with educating Hindus how to react to these people. And I think this is what we need. And I think people are slowly waking up now. This is now they're realizing this is not just those people who are having problem. This is going to be your children. Tomorrow your children will learn in school what caste they are. Not because they want to,
Right.
because these people will tell you, you need to know.
Absolutely. So that agency is essentially assigned to you because of this entire thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have revealed to everybody, what your caste was, right? I mean, if it was left to you, that's what it is doing to everyone, unfortunately, throughout the last few incidents. By the way, one last question. This equality labs is the one which creates trouble every time, right? Because I've heard this name time and again.
Yeah, they have been at the forefront of this since probably at least 2018 or so when they first released their survey. They have been sort of championing themselves as the Dalit organization, the Dalit voice, while at the same time, even within the Dalit community, we know for a fact that there are multiple voices, and they are not the sole voice. We know that for a fact, and we, as Aldrin ji, can tell you that. Now, the problem with that is that what they have done over the years is, if you look at their website in the earlier days, and if you look at some of the stuff that they have done earlier, open bigotry, open hate against Hinduism. But since, I would say, 2021, when the legislation and all these things started, they started to clean their website. They started to remove all the tweets. They even removed their March 2020 article attacking Holi. It's nowhere to be found on the website. They removed the Medium article, but fortunately, the internet doesn't just go away, right? So your footprint is always going to be there. So we have collected all of those articles, those tweets, where they openly say, Hinduism is basically, sort of, caste system, basically. And then apparently Hindus have stolen all kinds of like Muslim relics, Christian relics and things like that. That's what Hindus. So their directors have said this, not us. Their directors have actually said this, and they were behind the CAA. many other things that have been going on. So there's a pattern of sort of anti-Hindu and anti-India activism that essentially wants to dismantle a minority religion in America and just make sure that Hindus themselves feel guilty about who they are as people. Okay, and we didn't talk about the impact of what this ordinance or the law is
Yeah.
going to be. There are a lot of different issues. Number one, for example, all of a sudden employers have to comply with this, right? So you have to put energy, resources, human resources has to start to frame policies around a subject they don't know. It's not neutral. For example, gender, race, like age, right? Those types of things are very apparent. If someone says I'm black or I'm white, it's the race, right? However, what ends up happening is that if you are not able to understand what caste is, it's not as neutral. You can't just say like this is how caste looks like, because they want to define it by certain ways like color, vegetarian eating habits, and things like that. Even that doesn't really have a And then they say we will self-identify. Now, how do you self-identify without being the risk of discrimination in general? So HR policies will have an impact. If you are a manager, you are at risk of being sued. But even, for example, what somebody can say is like that manager is upper caste, and I don't feel comfortable working for that manager because I know he's going to discriminate against me. So HR, now the company has to provide special accommodation for someone who will claim that, hey, I'm a low caste and that person is upper caste, and I don't want to work for him because I know he will discriminate against me. So you need to assign me a new manager or provide me special accommodation so to make sure that I don't face caste discrimination. This can be a real deal, right? Entrepreneurs, let's say if you're a non-Hindu entrepreneur, right, and now you want to hire Indian tech workers, Hindu tech workers, or managers and things like that, you will be concerned because all of a sudden you have this law that is saying that these people have caste. These South Asians, these Hindus have a caste problem, and Seattle wants you to enforce caste ordinance. So the best thing to do is not hire those people. Why would you want to hire someone who will cause trouble, which you don't even know, right? So there's that problem. Then on top of that,
Right.
if you look at the ordinance, just to finish my thought, they actually have enforcement of cultural organizations. So if cultural organizations, so tomorrow, if you are a Agarwal Samaj or if you are a Patel Samaj and things like that, you could be accused of caste discrimination because you only want Agarwals to be there, or you want Patels to be there, or you want this to be there. Now all of a sudden you will have to maybe make special accommodations to say, well, you know what, I have to also let non-Patels in. Or if you're like, for example, you say only a certain type of vegetarian food will be catered, maybe there is a caste discrimination there too. You will find, I mean, you're opening up gutters everywhere and you're trying to smell where's the caste discrimination, no matter where you go. So this is a real problem that people in Seattle and around will face.
This is going to be quite chaotic, just by the looks of it. How are you planning to, push against it? What's the way forward?
So we have been obviously working with, the best thing to do is organize locally. That's number one. Obviously, we can't share all the details, but organizing locally, having conversations with lawmakers, making sure that it doesn't go to other cities in the vicinity, for example. So, the Hindu and the Indian American community needs to get up, open their eyes and say, like, this is going to have an impact on you personally speaking, on your jobs and your employment, on your kids. How do you make sure that it doesn't go, the fire doesn't spread further? Number one. Number two, hey, any ordinance can be repealed in the future, right? So the best thing to do is organize and push back and see if you can, get other people elected onto city council. Why not, right? People should be thinking about that in the long run. No law can be just set in stone. You can always repeal laws. Talk to the mayor, right? Express the interest. Put political pressure, but also put tech. There are a lot of tech companies there. If they all of a sudden start to say, "Hey, this is going to be a problem for us," we have, and there could be like complaints filed.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with the law enforcement. I mean, the mayor and the city council, and say this is going to be a big burden for us, and that's when they realize the gravity of the situation.
Okay. Looking
Yeah, of
forward
course.
to
My
what
apologies. Just
happens.
one more thing.
Yeah.
Just to kind of wrap up, you can also join our campaign. You can check it out at Kona.org. We have been working with a lot of people in Seattle. We have a team that is sort of organizing locally as well. So we would love to have others join us.
Sure. We'll put the website link in the description below. Thank you so much, Nikunji, Aldrin for joining us today. This definitely seems a little bit more serious than everything else that's happened in the past, because it's moved on to a political level where it's already come out in the form of a legislation. Uh, so it's very important that everybody understands who's behind it, what's the intention, is there caste discrimination in reality, like they say so, and how do you deal with it? And I think you've answered all of those questions very rightly. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Namaste.
you, Shaman.